So the purpose of today's video is going to teach you and actually more or less review, hopefully from 6th grade, how to solve proportions. You'll practice it on your own and with a partner, and then we will continue looking at proportional word problems. So we're going to start with the very first page of your ratio and proportion packet. And at this page, you can see we're talking about proportions. Definition: a proportion is two equal ratios. And to solve proportions, we cross multiply. It's important to notice that we have an equal sign in between the two fractions. If you had an adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, you would have to do something different. But when you have an equals, then we cross multiply. I always like to start wherever the x or the variable is, but it's not wrong if you don't. It's just a habit that I got into when I was young, and I continue to do it. So I always start with the x and I go diagonally across and I multiply. 8 times x is 8x, and then I go the other diagonal and multiply. 12 times 6 is 72. And then we just solve. This is a one-step equation. We solve it for x. That should hopefully be the easy part, and you get x equal to 9. Looking at number 2, I'm going to start with my variable and go diagonally and multiply. 10t diagonally is equal to 20, and then we just solve and you get t equal to 2. Now, proportions don't always have to work out to be nice whole numbers, as you see here. Often we do it, but it could be decimals, it could be fractions, and certainly utilize your calculator as well to assist on these. If I continue with number 3, I'm going to start with my variable, go diagonally. I get 165 times x is 165, and diagonally across here is going to be 1,320 using a calculator or doing it out. To solve for x, I divide by 165, and that turns out to be 8 exactly. Number 4, start with my variable, go diagonally. Y times 3.4 is 3.4y. Multiply on this other diagonal. 0.4 times 10.2 will be 4.08. And then we solve for y. We divide by 3.4, or 3 4/10, and you get 1.2. And finally, fractions done the same way. Certainly you could utilize your fraction button, but as I solve this, I'm going to review how we do it without a calculator, because it's always a good habit to get into. We get 3/4 n equals, and it's hard for me to see this, when I multiply this side, 5 6 times 1/2 is 5 times 1 is 5. 6 times 2 is going to be 12. And just to review how I solve the fraction problem, I divide by 3/4, which is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal, which is 4/3. These would cancel, these cancel, and you get 5/9. Okay, the first task you're going to do right now is turn to the second page and complete the 8 problems here without any assistance from me. And then when you're done, I want you to check with your elbow partner and see if you agree or if you disagree. If you disagree, then you want to compare your work and then look with a person next to you to kind of be the mediator and decide who's right, who's not, or if you're both wrong, to guide you. So you're going to complete this page, then check with your partner. Any discrepancies you're going to discuss and possibly check with another person around you. Pause the video at this time, and then when you are done with this and discussing it and checking your answers, then start the video again for the next lesson. Okay, now at this point you should have completed the proportion problems and checked them over with a partner. And what I want to do now is go on to the lesson of solving word problems that involve proportions. So you can use proportions to solve word problems if we're comparing things. You want to read the problem, determine what is being compared. From there, we set up a proportion using the given information and one unknown to solve. Proportions are very important that we use correct order. So if we're talking about apples on the top of proportion, then all numbers on top of the proportion refer to apples. And to assist in that and avoid having the wrong order, I always start by writing in words what it is that I am comparing. So in number 1, I'm seeing right away these numbers go together. In 3 hours, Ben can walk 14 miles. What I'm comparing is hours to miles. From there, I'm going to fill in my numbers. One side, the numbers that go together. Right away, we're given 3 hours. Ben can walk 14 miles. All the numbers that I put on the top of my proportion will refer to hours, and the numbers on the bottom will refer to miles. Find the time. This is my unknown, T, time for hours, it will take to walk 25 miles. So these numbers go together and these go together. At this point, that's your setup. We're going to cross multiply and solve. It is okay for these not to work out to be whole numbers. I do want to caution you though, a fraction is much more precise than decimals. So sometimes we use fractions and sometimes we use decimals. If they're equivalent, then that's fine. If the fraction is not a repeating, if the decimal is not a repeating decimal or doesn't terminate, I would suggest using fractions. When I move on to number 2 here, I can see these two numbers go together and these are going to go together. 6 oranges cost $1. So we are comparing oranges to money. In my proportion, these go together. 6 goes to $1. 28 represents oranges, so I'm going to put it on top. And I want to find the cost, which would be my X on bottom. This one, as I cross multiply and solve and divide by 6 here, we're talking money. So when we're talking money, in your calculator you would get 4.6 repeating. But when we're talking money, we're going to go 2 decimal points and follow rules of rounding. So it would be $4.67. Number 3, Dasha walks 1.5 miles in 22 minutes. How long will it take her to walk in 4 miles? So what's being compared here is Dasha's miles to her minutes. So I'll set up a proportion. These two numbers certainly go hand in hand. All my top numbers will be miles because I wrote miles first. And the bottom would be minutes because I put minutes second. I want to caution you, if they give you minutes and then they give you hours, you need to convert using 60 minutes in an hour. We will look at those shortly. I want to know how long will it take her to walk, so I'm asking for the time if she walks 4 miles. So there's your proportion, and as I solve, I cross multiply. I'm going to divide both sides by 1.5, and you get 58.6 repeating. As a fraction, it would be 58 2/3. Or 58.6, make sure you put the repeating and don't just assume rounding unless it's money or unless you're told what to round to. Okay, going on to number 4. Madeline paid $1.08 to make 18 copies at the copy shop. These two numbers go together. The question and 40 goes together. Right away from that first sentence, what are we comparing? Money to copies. In my proportion, the $1.08 goes to the 18. At this rate, how much would she pay for 40 copies. 40 is copies, going to go on the bottom. I'll put my X on top. Cross multiply, 18x when I multiply here would be 43.2. Divide by 18 and we get 2.4. But it's money. How much will it cost? So more like $2.40. And number 5, we're comparing a granola to the amount of fat. And we want to know how much fat is in the recommended serving size of granola. So we're comparing a box of granola to its fat. In the proportion, 354 certainly is the size of the box, 20 grams of fat. I am now given 55 grams is the serving size of granola, and I want to know how much fat. So fat is my unknown. 55 will go on top. And then I cross multiply. 354x will equal 55 times 20, 1100. And then I divide by 354, and I'll get a decimal, whatever that would be. My guess is 3 point something. So if I want to leave it as a fraction, 38 over 354, if you made a decimal, you could go through and do your decimal. 3.1 something. Okay, and my last one. On a particular day, the exchange rate for dollars to marks, there's what I'm comparing, was $1 to the $5.802 to marks. I'm given 1 is to 0.5582. Notice the 1 isn't obvious in this problem. You have to read it through it and understand that it's 1. The question, how many German marks? Marks is unknown for $350. And I'll cross multiply, and that's what I get. So at this point, I'd like you to practice the next 6 problems on your own, just like before. Setting up a proportion, solving, do it on your own, and then check your answers with your elbow partner.